I came straight from a summer school, so I did not know what to expect, and I did not have any time to practice any Russian. So I arrived in the middle of the summer, towards the end of August, and I'll be honest, I was quite scared. I was quite scared when I first got here, because completely out of my depth, like didn't know how to communicate with anyone, so just sort of wandered around in a bit of a daze for a while, and that lasted about a week, because as soon as I met the staff and as soon as I met the other people, just felt instantly at home.
Well, I came to Donetsk straight from my CELTA course. In a way, I think it was much better for me because I was really in the mindset. I did all the practical training and the theory, and I think it was good to just jump right in. I feel it was really great when I first arrived. Natasha greeted me right from the train station, had a home-cooked meal my first night in the city. So I really felt welcomed and felt like a part of a community right from the beginning. It was definitely a big transition going from the much shorter CELTA lessons to full-length lessons in a corporate environment, a lot more formal, and I think that I got a lot of support. So it was definitely a little bit confusing being in a new city, figuring out logistics, where to go, where I lived, even. But it was definitely a good experience in the end.
After the first 2 months, I grew in confidence a lot. I became more confident walking into a classroom with less materials. So at the beginning, when I first started, I would have a stack of materials and exercises to go into the class to teach with. But then as time went on, I started to realize that I didn't need all of this. It was sort of a crutch that I leaned on and it wasn't really necessary. So I started to learn how to think on my feet in classes, how to pick up on what the students needed rather than what I had actually planned in the lesson.
My teaching, I used to constantly fret and worry about how much I planned. I'd sit there for 2-3 hours with one lesson, looking over it, even after I planned it, thinking, what if this went wrong? What if this doesn't work? What if this happens? What if this happens? And then I go into the lesson and all the things that I predicted would go wrong would go right, and then something else that I hadn't predicted would go wrong. And I used to be so rigid in my lesson planning. I've now got to a stage where I'm a lot more flexible. I can just work with what I've got. If something goes wrong, I can use it. I can turn it around and carry on teaching with this problem now having become a positive thing. Just generally teaching, the speed of my language delivery, I've become a lot more aware of myself in a classroom. I used to just go in, do the lesson, come out and think, yeah, that was good. Now I'm checking myself and thinking, was that a clear explanation? Do they understand what I'm doing? Did they understand those instructions? Instead of just assuming that they do, I'm now actually beginning to understand whether they have or not.
Well, as I said, I came straight from my CELTA course, and I really thought that induction week was a really great sort of an extra bonus CELTA sessions. They really served, I think, to help the transition between planning 20 or 40-minute lessons to planning full-length 90-minute integrated skills lessons. And it really provided me with a framework that was invaluable to the next the few months experience up until now that I'm using every day.
My lesson planning was a big challenge for me to plan a lesson, and having people that are there all the time ready to offer you help with this this preternatural ability to just look at a bookshelf and go that one, that one, that one and that one, and pull lessons off of a shelf and just give them to you, and you have this fantastic range of materials and you're like, wow, okay, this is great, I can work this in. Any fear about lessons not being adequate, lessons not being long enough, was just taken away straight away by how supportive they were in the whole planning process. For someone who is very new to teaching, that's something that I really needed. I need a lot of positive reinforcement and support, and that was just given unconditionally.
Our groups have pace charts that go at the same speed across the same level. So we had 4 pre-intermediate groups who were all following the same track. And so I taught 3 of these groups, and then a more experienced teacher, Valia, taught 1 of them. And it was really great because she would teach the group first. So I would plan what I wanted to do for this lesson, and then I would speak with her, see what she had planned, see what was the same, see what was different, and we could discuss why maybe her activities weren't good for her group, or why they would work for my group as well. And it was really good because she has such a knowledge of the resources, of go-to activities, and I've stolen so many from her. And it was really good because since then I've now noticed that this year we've had things where I've suggested some things and she has said, yeah, that's really good, I hadn't thought about doing that. And at the same time, like, she still helps me, and it's really great to have that experience to cooperate with.
Another thing that I quite like about our school is we have quite a lot of observations from our DOS. I don't take criticism very well normally. Maybe it's an only child thing, I don't know. But she's very good at making it not criticism, that it's helping you to, not just to make better lessons, but to make things easier for yourself. So even though there is some criticism sometimes pushed in there, it's kind of wrapped up in these other things that makes it more about me. So I think that I take it on board, and I know that when we have feedback, she notices that, you know, what was might have been an issue in a previous observation is not an issue anymore, and there's something new we can work on.
Yeah, I think the 2 biggest things. The first one was observations. I had quite a few observations during the first month or so for every class, every level. And so I could see the common themes that came up across the levels, across the classes as issues. The main one being grading of language. I remember for the first month, I think it was, every feedback, you need to grade your language, you need to grade your language, you need to grade your language. And it was great because we talked about, it wasn't just you need to grade your language, that was it. We had action points. So think about your instructions, write your instructions out beforehand. Get to know the level, get to know what language they don't know yet, what they won't be able to understand. And so after a month of that, I finally remember having a feedback session where it was like, your instructions were a lot clearer, your language was graded a lot better, and I remember sort of, coming out of it, fists in the air, yes!
One key thing that I find very, very useful for professional development is the professional development plans that we are offered with the schools. So we have a meeting with the academic manager, and they focus on something that you would like to improve yourself. You gear your lesson planning and your efforts, and you focus on this thing in particular. And for me, it was the fluency stage of the lesson. So I could build up the lesson, I could sort of do the ECRIF model, but then at the fluency stage, I felt personally that my students weren't getting enough fluency, speaking, and freedom. So this is something that I started working on, and I'm still working on. And the constant observations throughout this course, this process, are really helping me to sort of guide me towards where I really want to get.
I've also been lucky to do the IH Young Learner Certificate, which for me helped a lot, especially being able to swap ideas and discuss with fellow teachers kind of their problems in the classroom, how they solved them. Because there were some problems I was having that someone else gave me a very simple idea which fixed the problem in 2 minutes. And it's kind of, why didn't I think of this? But someone else did, so swapping ideas is really useful and really helpful. And I've also been to IH workshops in Ukraine, which it's nice to see ideas from different schools in Ukraine as well, and also from a more selfish point of view to see that my ideas are similar to people who've been teaching for much longer than I have, and that even though my experience is much less, I still have the same ideas as someone who's been teaching for 10 years. It's very nice to see that.
What I think I found most difficult when I came was teaching purely business classes, because business isn't something that interests me personally. So I really appreciate the fact that we have this business English teaching course, so that I can learn a bit more about business, but also learn a bit more about my students, maybe what their lives are like, their working lives are like, so that maybe I know a bit more about the background for them. So it's maybe not directly useful always for teaching, but indirectly I think it helps me, and therefore it helps my lessons. So I find this really useful.
Up until now, I mean, this is 2 years, almost 2 years into being here, we've had Russian lessons on a regular basis. And obviously there was a dual reason for that. Being able to interact and survive in this particular society, yes, we needed the language, but on a different level, being language learners ourselves certainly helped us in the teaching room a lot. Many Russian lessons I would sit down and think, so this is how my students sort of perceive this, and that helped tremendously.